Holy mother of smokes, what a fantastic game we've just had in the late window. Welcome to the Irish NFL show in association with Quimbet Instant Reaction Podcast. When I say instant, I mean instant, because myself and Brian O'Leary are recording to this literally seconds after Keyshawn Nixon had the interception which sealed the win for the Green Bay Packers 28-21 against Chicago Bears. It was a very, very entertaining late game, but an interesting one for so many different reasons as to how each team approached this. To give people a brief sort of tail of the tape, in the first half, the Green Bay had way more yards, were very, very dominant. I think they had over 200 yards of total offense compared to Chicago's 70-odd. Chicago ended up mounting a massive comeback. Caleb Williams throwing some superb throws, even though he had to scramble a lot. But in the end, there was at the very, very last play of the game, there was a 4th-and-1 chance, maybe 30 seconds left in the clock. He decides to go for the shot in the end zone and throws an interception instead of running it over and giving himself another set of downs. There's so much to get into just that game in particular, Brian. I guess was your initial sense as to what is a game which, I don't know. I thought the Bears, who've built so much of this sort of new clutch gene, would have found a way to come back and win this one. But as I always say in this podcast, you can't win football games playing just one good half of football. And that bad first half probably gave them a bit too much of a mountain to climb.
You know, Shane, sometimes when we do this podcast, the enjoyable aspect is it's very difficult to get your thoughts together before you come on because we recorded so quickly. And that's how it feels tonight. I haven't watched that game. What a great game. I mean, the Bills ball week was significant in the manner in which the Bears are back and they're fighting for the division. And by golly, did they put it up to the Packers. We've seen tight games over the years, but you always felt the Packers would always have enough. It didn't feel like that tonight. I know they have got over the line. They've won by a touchdown at the end. But even towards the back end of the game, despite the Packers continuously getting themselves out in front, the Bears kept coming back at them, leveling the game up, and even there at the end, it looked like they were going to level it up. Bit disappointed with the play call, to be honest, Shane. Having watched them run the ball so effectively throughout the course of the second half. A 4th-and-1, not even a 4th-and-1, it felt like a 4th-and-a-half a yard. Bear in mind the third down. The play call for me was questionable. But then again, like Caleb Williams has stepped up to the mark over the course of the last few weeks in big moments down the stretch. They've come back time and time again. So maybe it isn't a surprise that the head coach put it in his hands. But for me, it was a bit of it's a difficult one. When you're half a yard to go, you feel get the first down, reset, and then we get four shots at essentially getting the tying touchdown. It wouldn't have been a tying touchdown because I think even as we said it on the group, Tom Brady and the Fox commentary team were calling it out. If the Bears were to score, in all likelihood, they were going to go for the win and 2 points. That is Ben Johnson. That's why they want him. He's a fantastic head coach.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the Ben Johnson-ness came into that very, very last play as to whether, you're in 4th-and-1, just go for it, because they had a lot of time to think about what they're going to do with that play, because Green Bay took a timeout, Chicago had a timeout just beforehand, a lot of time to figure out what they wanted to do with that. But even just like, in terms of generally speaking, like from the Packers' point of view, Jordan Love obviously gave away an interception pretty early. When he did throw and score touchdowns, it was a really nice 41-yard pass to Watson, which is pretty sweet in the first half as well. There was an 80-yard drive which ended up in a 23-yard pass again for Watson. The Packers did look pretty sweet on offense as well when they had to. But I still just can't help come out of this game without the biggest takeaway being just around how explosive Caleb Williams can be. Connor's often said on this podcast that Caleb Williams, when he strikes gold, it's a jackpot, and it's explosive and the ceiling's high, and some of the passes, I mean, even just, I can't remember which touchdown pass it was to
the one on the perimeter to the tight end. Oh yeah, I know where you're talking. I think it was in the third quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought he threw a pick, but he laser shot it into into the hands of his own man. But then there's other times where he's scrambling. It feels like every play he's scrambling, and maybe I'm being slightly biased by a point that was made on the commentary. But I just feel like because you're scrambling so much, you're not trusting your offensive line, which has been such a key strength of that. You're not trusting. Yeah, are you actually removing your options to what you actually can do with the ball because you're running out of the pocket so quickly? It felt like there was a couple of times he made the decision to run out of the pocket almost too quickly, where sometimes it was warranted because the pressure that Green Bay put on them, and Green Bay had a lot of front up pressure, as did Chicago. This is a game that had a lot of quarterback blitz and a lot of high pressure blitz. Jordan Love was very calm in his blitzes. He was a very high completion rate and managed to get some of his more impressive passes, was facing a lot of pressure. Whereas every time the pressure came out, Caleb, he ran. And he created some fantastic plays. It was box office. He's cardiac Caleb. He's popcorn Caleb. But sometimes I wonder whether that's wise Caleb.
That's because I think you're an old school fan, Shane Lush, your quarterback, to remain in the pocket and drill those plays. I think what we're seeing over the course of the season, when he gets out in the perimeter, he's making these plays, which kind of alleviates the stress in a way, because when he does get out there, you're kind of thinking, right, he can make these plays. I want to flip side to the Packers, because if you're walking, you're when we do kind of wave this game tomorrow in more details during the week, and obviously in our 9 o'clock show on Monday evening, you wonder which team feels the better, which team feels like you're more confident of going on a run. And right now, just bizarrely enough, I was still leaning Bears, because I thought, with the exception of two big explosive plays, that being the Watson touchdown in the third quarter, which is a bit of a killer for the Bears, having got back level to give up that touchdown so quickly. And even the one before halftime, like two markedly explosive plays.
Melton,
yeah, the Melton one before halftime as well. Like, if the Bears find a way to navigate those drives and not give up those big plays and those big explosive touchdowns, the game's very different. But then again, Packers fans will say, yeah, but we're in a position to make those plays because we have players, deep ball threats that allows Jordan Love to make those plays. I think more about the timing of the game and when those scores happened. You give them back the ball with 47 seconds to go thereabouts in the first half. You're assuming field goal, worst case scenario. Packers found a way to go down and get a touchdown. Third quarter, you've come back strongly. You've got yourself back in the position to go and try make a stop, get yourself back in, maybe even take the lead. They give up the big touchdown. I think they'll be the key talking points for a Bears fan defensively tomorrow, how they allow those plays to happen, because they haven't been allowing those plays to happen recently. Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, former head coach of the Saints, has done a stellar job this year with the defense. Those plays will be disappointing. It's one that it won't take long for them to get over, because it's 2 weeks' time. They got the Browns next week. You think that's winnable. Then they got the Packers and Soldier Field, which is a huge game on a Saturday night.
Yeah, a huge game. I think, just to your point, I guess, to round off on this game before we talk about one or two others that caught our eye in the early window. I'm feeling good about the Packers defense coming out of this. I mean, the fact that they were able to take control, the Bears offense couldn't really do anything in the first half, and I put actually more credit on the Packers defense and how aggressive they were and how effective they were, more than blame on the Bears offense. They were forced to change their game plan in the second half because the Packers were just suffocating in the first half. So I think they should take credit for that. Quick sprint through a few results before we talk in depth about 3 games in the early window, which 3 or 4 games in the early window, which had huge consequences. The late window, Rams beat the Cardinals 45-17, kind of as we expected, and the Broncos played it fairly close with the Raiders, but still came up 24-17 victors. The Broncos now tied with the Patriots atop the AFC in terms of record, but still not being able to dominate games. It'll be an interesting one to talk about. In the early window, probably, the most entertaining game, and maybe not the most consequential. The most consequential will be the one we'll talk about that Kieran Boyle was at between the Jags and the Colts. But let's talk about the Bills and the Bengals. Again, really entertaining in the snow in Buffalo, exactly what we love about football. Joe Burrow comes out and you realize how superbly accurate he is, until there's 2 really, really, I would argue, sloppy interceptions in a row in the fourth quarter, which completely switches from being, a game which Cincinnati was in control of to ones that they just threw in the bin. At the start of the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, the Bengals got a touchdown to go 28-18 up in Buffalo. You can't say that your defense got on top of this game, but the Bengals offense definitely did. And by the end of the game, Buffalo win 39-34. Just a really, really frustrating end to a really good performance from Joe Burrow.
Yeah, you look at the stats of the game, Shane, you look at some of the numbers. T. Higgins, huge numbers, 2 touchdowns. Brown, the running back, has a fantastic game. The coverage is actually on the screen right now as I'm watching it, actually talking about this game. And Jamar Chase doesn't have his best games, but really effective games from their tight ends, from their wide receivers, running back. Joe Burrow looks solidified over the course of the game. They couldn't stop, the Bills defense couldn't stop the Bengals for nice parts of the game, in particular their run game. It looked like they were just running down their throat. They were having huge plays. And as you touched on there, they're up by 10. The Bills have had some nice drives huge plays to get themselves within touching distance of this Bengals team. But I always felt like the Bengals were in a position to go and win this game. They were going to go down and have another big long drive, take a lot of time off the clock. That pick six was a huge turning point in the game. The throw was weird. It was like a shovel pass, not a shovel pass. I didn't know what he was trying to shovel pass it or throw it. Obviously, they go back. I think you touched on it there. Those two, they were back-to-back interceptions for Joe Burrow. It was like as if that disappointing throw, which led to the pick six, was in his head when he went straight back out for the next drive. And sometimes I remember last year there was a situation with Kirk wasn't this similar. Actually, when it's time in the Vikings, he threw back-to-back interceptions, which led to touchdowns. You wonder in that instance, do you take a run play just to give your quarterback a little time to ease off the disappointment of that throw? The Bills really need that comeback. They've come out the right side of it. It's one of those games that those who haven't watched will look at that and go, that's a typical Bengals-Bills game, back and forth. But for me, it felt like, again, the Bengals threw away. But even in the group, we were talking about the permutations. If the Bills had lost that game, and ultimately that would have led to the Patriots potentially securing the division next week. It's a huge win. It obviously kind of changes the landscape of the week ahead in terms of now the Bills will think, why can't we go into Foxborough and beat the Patriots next week? Josh Allen is Josh Allen. He finds ways when it doesn't look like a 51-yard touchdown thereabouts, a rushing touchdown. That's why he's the king in Buffalo right now. He finds ways to bring them back from the death, even if their defense did pull out some of these plays in the end.
Yeah, very good. I guess a quick spin through a couple of other results. The Vikings, who scored 0 points last week, managed to play against the Commanders, who scored 0 points against the Vikings. Vikings winning 31-0 on that one. We'll talk a bit more about that on Monday night as we convene for our live show, which of course was live streamed at 9 o'clock across all of our social feeds, available for you in podcast form from Tuesday morning. Jets Dolphins coming away at 34-10 victors. People were saying that the Jets have never beat Tua, and the Tua had never won below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Something had to give, and of course the Jets weren't the ones that were going to give in that particular match.
Playoff bound Dolphins, Shane. Yeah,
it really could happen. I say it really could happen, and then you look at their schedule and realize that they still have to go to the Steelers on Monday Night Football, play at home to the Bengals, at home to the Bucs, and then go to the Patriots. And it's the Steelers that I want to talk about next, Brian, because it's funny. There was a great moment in the commentary today where Jim Nantz turns around and goes, there's a ball being passed and it's midair from Rodgers going towards DK Metcalf on the right-hand side. And it's like, they haven't thrown a deep pass in a month. And then he catches it. And all of a sudden, this Steelers offense has had a different complexion to it. I guess the Ravens scene that I just felt like it kept hitting itself. There was another moment with Isaiah Likely. We had the ball in his hands and he just let it slip inside the end zone. The touchdown that wasn't for the Ravens. Another really, really sloppy interception from Lamar Jackson. This is a game where I think people can look at it and genuinely say, I thought the Ravens were the better team. And if we look at their yardage, they have 100 more total yards than the Steelers did. But one or two key things. First, there's a couple of key defensive plays from the Steelers in the second half, but there's a couple of really, really either sloppy or boneheaded or unlucky things that counted against the Ravens here. And sure enough, the Steelers managed to wake up their offense a bit here and come away with a victory 27-22.
It feels like the Ravens are shot. I know you're saying the numbers reflect a better game from offensively, but we've seen over the last month they haven't been playing at a level, which we saw last year. And we even said a couple of weeks ago, everyone's been down on the Steelers, but yet they got to play each other twice, and everybody will assume the Ravens will claw their way back in the division. They'll beat the Steelers, and they'll go on and win the division. Well, here we are now. The Steelers have gone in and beaten them, and you're right. Like the joke of the course of the commentator where he said they haven't had a big play in quite some time. Metcalf comes up, but that was a play that they kept going after today. They didn't necessarily get them all, but they got quite a few of them where they knew Metcalf had the beating of that cornerback from early on in the game. The huge win, as you said, they're going to play the Dolphins next week, and all of a sudden, people are going to look at this. We shouldn't have been surprised in a way, Shane, because Mike Tomlin has taken a lot of disgruntlement comments over the course of the week. The fans were booing him last week. Mike Tomlin is arguably one of the best head coaches in the league. Should have been surprised that he found a way to go in and beat the Ravens.
I'm not surprised. I picked the Steelers to win, and I'm the only one of us who did for the exact reason, because I thought Mike Tomlin, when the whole world was saying it's your time to go, he'll find a way to shut us up. We've seen it many times before, and then they'll go up against Miami next week and play one of the worst offensive games of football you've seen. That's just the Steelers script now.
Well, I recall a win over the Dolphins on a Monday Night Football with a Steelers game. Steelers beaten 3-0. The game was delayed for 2.5 hours where it kicked off, and I finished 3-0 because of the bad weather. Hopefully, though, we don't get that next week. But if you're a Steelers fan tonight, it's amazing what we can do. Now they're going to be looking at this tomorrow morning, saying, "Okay, we've got the Dolphins next week at home. We've got to play the Ravens again, but yet this time around it'll be in Pittsburgh. Now it's very much in their hands. They can go in win this division. The Bengals have lost this evening. It's going to take a huge upward turn of results for the Bengals to go and win this division. So right now it feels like it's a two-horse race. They've beaten them tonight. You would argue they'd be favourites the next time to beat them. If they can take care of teams like the Dolphins, the Steelers are not likely will win this division and be in the playoffs.
Yeah, if you actually look at the Steelers games, there are two home games, Dolphins and the Ravens, but they're two away games at the Lions and at the Browns. And the Browns might be a relatively easy one, considering that they dropped one to Tennessee, 31-29. Again, might be one that we'll touch on more on Monday, but it does mean that the Giants are currently the holders of the number one seed, and the two Giants quarterbacks that aren't Jackson Dart are currently holders of nice TV jobs. Jameis Winston did a nice job on Fox today, I thought.
Well, that's interesting you say we're the number one seed. I really
Sorry, number one pick. Number one pick.
I wish one day
Sorry.
we will see us being number one seed again. But yeah, right now we're the number one pick. Let's not go there, Shane, because it's terrible. There is fans out there now who are starting to turn their eye and attention to Tankathon and where they sit in the draft. And like this time last year, the Giants were essentially looking like they were locked in down to first pick in the draft, and that didn't play out. I still don't think it'll play out that way. There's other better stories in the NFL than worry about who's going to be selecting top of the draft. That's for the off season. It's like,
Well, it's still an important outcome of that game for Tennessee, which again we'll break down properly later on in the week. Another game as well that the Seahawks playing a pretty anemic first half against the Falcons, but coming out at 37-9 victors. That means the Falcons are now out of playoff contention ahead of their Thursday night football matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's talk about the Buccaneers very quickly. They dropped one 24-20 against the New Orleans Saints. A quick shout out to Charlie Smyth. Hit all of his PAT attempts and a field goal. Missed a field goal in the first half. I think it was a 49-yarder pull just to the left. Conditions weren't great in Florida, in fairness, but I think he had a fairly solid game. But let's talk a bit more about what the Saints were able to do overall here. People are talking about Shook and his ability, but he never really took control of this game. I'm not quite sure rushing it really took control of this game. They were just able to score at key moments when the Buccaneers were just kind of caught napping. And it's really opened up this division now because the Buccaneers are sitting at 7-6. The Panthers have had a week off this week so they can sort of recoup for next week. They're also at 7-6. And before the Panthers have to go and play against the Saints next week, I mean, there really is a lot of, the steam is running out of the sails for the Pirates at the moment.
yeah, it does feel like that. We've spoke time and time again about the Bucs and the inconsistency over the course of the season and the injuries, and Mike Evans been touted as potentially coming back this week. McMillan was touted as coming back then on Friday. They're both ruled out. Hughes lost. The rookie wide receivers dropped off to the level in which we saw earlier in the season. Godwin came back to an effective game, but their defense is not playing at a level which we've seen in previous seasons, and it's very much there for the Panthers. I mean, Ron Rivera was on during the week, a great interview with Connor, and he said this division is very much there for the Panthers. If you can find ways to tweak their road form and get a win on the road, 2 wins in a row, it could potentially lead to them winning this division, which would be a huge upset for where we were last year and where Bryce Young was in terms of his NFL progression. Now all of a sudden now we're talking about potentially winning the NFC South. Tyler Shock is going to make things difficult for the Saints in that, I don't mean to be jumping back to draft content, but he's playing at a level right now which is giving them things to think about. I know he's not playing at these huge well numbers, but last week he pulled them from 16-0 down against the Dolphins and nearly winning the game. He's had 2 rushing touchdowns tonight. He's got wheels. He can get out on the perimeter and do things. He's got an effective arm. He was a high draft pick last year. Let's not forget, 2nd round pick. And all of a sudden now you're thinking, what are they going to do in this situation? If he plays out for the rest of the season to win more games, he's putting content on the page that has Kellen Moore thinking, maybe I can work with this guy. Maybe I can turn him into the solidified starter that the Saints need. Probably it makes an easier conversation when it comes draft time. But look, for the Saints, probably deserve it. They've had a few tight games of late where they didn't get over the line. So it's good to see them get a win. These teams always play each other tight. There's a huge rivalry between the Saints and Bucs. So it probably doesn't come as a surprise I think the line was 9 points before the game with Quimby. Probably very big, bearing in mind the conditions. And for the Saints fans, they'll be cock-a-hoop, but Bucks are probably wondering where they're at right now. They've got to probably go and beat this Panthers team when it comes around the game when they go into Carolina.
Yeah, it's that game. I think the Panthers and the Buccaneers still have to play each other twice. They have to go in Carolina on the 21st, and then the final game of the season will be in Tampa Bay. So that's a very, very interesting division. So let's park the NFC South, and we're going to finish on the AFC South. As we're recording this, we don't know the result of the Chiefs-Texans game because, of course, we're recording it before that one has kicked off. Of course, how the Texans are doing is going to really change the complexion of the AFC South, but so has what has happened today in Jacksonville. Great coverage today from our colleague Kieran Boyle, who was on the ground and was doing a bit of build-up, and you'll see reactions that I have across our social media profiles. But it really feels like the Colts season is kind of done here. And I know, like, if you would have put out on a tweet this time last year that the Colts Super Bowl ambitions would be ruined because Daniel Jones got an injury, you'd think that you'd be going absolutely crazy. But we're in a situation now where the Colts have lost 4 of their last 5. The last 4 they've played on US soil, 3 losses in a row. Daniel Jones comes off now. It looks like he has an Achilles injury, which is probably going to keep him out until the start of the 2026 season. Interesting because he's a pending free agent, which of course is going to really affect his future. But just on the field at the moment, they don't have Andy Richardson. They're playing Riley Leonard, who was the Notre Dame quarterback last year today, who wasn't the worst, but obviously needs work. Against Jacksonville team who just seem to have their stuff together, even from start to finish, they look like the better team. Even Jonathan Taylor, didn't seem to get as much room as he normally did. There was a couple of key stops that the Jacksonville defense was able to make on him, which I don't think would have happened if this game had taken place, at the start of October, as opposed to the start of December. We're now in a position where the Jags are very much in the driving seat at division 9-4. Colts are 8-5, so they're not done yet, but that injury situation and it's the fact that they are just trending in the complete wrong direction definitely gives you a bad feeling for them. And and these 2 teams still have to play each other again. There's a tough road ahead for Indianapolis to try and make sure they can keep their head above water here now that Daniel Jones is out for the season.
Yeah, the momentum for this game was all with the Jags going. I'm surprised they weren't even favourites for the game. They were 2.5 point underdogs by the time the game kicked off at 6 o'clock our time. The Jags have come with a run. The weather kind of wasn't conducive to a really strong performance from the Colts. You probably thought Jonathan Taylor had a big game, but even prior to the injury, whilst they were leveling the game, it didn't seem that the Colts were out of sync. It kind of similar to what we've seen over the last few weeks: inconsistency offense, some bright spots, some bad turnovers, like we saw again early on. Daniel Jones got picked. It just reminds me of the Daniel Jones that we watched time and time again back in his time during the Giants. But unfortunately for Daniel Jones, no one wants to see an injury like that. He's done his Achilles, which essentially rules him out for the season. And I like what it kind of ruins his off-season aspirations, because no matter what the circumstances of how the season would have ended for the Colts, he probably was legitimate in a situation where he wasn't getting paid by the Colts. He would have got paid by someone else. That's fortunately now not like it's going to go away. And for this Colts team right now, as you said, they're on a very bad run. And when you're on a run like this, it's very difficult to overturn it. Like you're looking at the schedule and you're trying to find games that they can win against poor teams and keep them in the sweepstakes. But you made an interesting comment last week within our own personal group that looking at the schedule, there is a legitimate argument that they could run the table in terms of not winning any game. And it feels like that's the way they are right now. It feels like it's been a fantastic season. No one thought they were going to fall away like they did. Like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about them beating the Chiefs, ending the Chiefs season, effectively securing a playoff spot, whether it's a divisional wildcard. Feels a million miles from where they are. And for the Jags, complete opposite now. They're going to look at Sunday Night Football, hoping they can get a bit of breathing space from the Texans. But right now, again, the Texans are coming with a run. And if they were to beat the Chiefs tonight, they'll be very much back in the melting pot.
Even if they don't, I mean, like there's still very much a really interesting run in now for this division. The Jags and the Texans don't have to play against each other, but it's still going to be key. I mean, just as a last point, referring back to that Colts thing, I mean, how they could possibly end up the season as 8-9. Their next 4 games are at Seattle, at home to San Francisco on a primetime game, at home to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then at the Houston Texans. So that's none of those games are easy. They're all winning teams. They're all really, really tough defenses in particular against what used to be the highest scoring offense in the league. So look, there's a lot to Yeah, there's a lot to unpack for them, as there will be lots to unpack for us when we reconvene at 9:00 tonight, I guess, as it is technically Monday, the 8th of December. So for now, thank you all for listening. And for you, Brian, thank you.